Hey guys, tonight we're tiptoeing into a palace so grand, so silent, and yet so full of anxious pacing that even the moonlight hesitates to peek through the silk curtains. We're going back, way back, to ancient China, where emperors ruled with the stroke of a calligraphy brush, and often couldn't get a wink of sleep, no matter how many concubines or bowls of warm tea they had. Imagine this: the Forbidden City, just past midnight. The stars glitter politely above, palace guards shuffle along marble corridors, and somewhere deep inside, the most powerful man in the land is lying on a stone bed, eyes wide open, thinking about insomnia. You think your sleep schedule's bad? Try managing a continent-sized empire while battling dreams that won't come. Trust me, you wouldn't last a week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is over. There? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You ease through a narrow passage lined with red lacquered columns. The scent of sandalwood hangs like a silk ribbon in the air, curling into your nose and settling somewhere soft behind your eyes. It's quiet, eerily quiet, except for the creak of your shoes on polished stone and the distant clink of bronze. Wind chimes outside. Somewhere nearby, the emperor stirs. Tonight is one of many sleepless nights in the Forbidden City. Despite his reputation as the son of heaven, blessed by the mandate, he still can't escape the petty cruelty of the human body, especially the brain, which likes to replay the same 5 policy debates from court all night long. Sound familiar? You. Pause outside his chamber. No one stops you. After all, in this dreamy version of history, you're not a spy or a servant or a ghost. You're a quiet observer, welcomed by the stillness. Inside, the emperor lies stiffly on a bed carved from sandalwood, legs tucked in under a silk quilt that cost more than your entire apartment. Beside him, a low table glows with the flickering light of a lotus-shaped oil lamp. Nearby, a scroll lies open, half read. He's been trying to lull himself to sleep with Confucian philosophy. It hasn't worked. His eyes flit toward a small jade stone resting on the windowsill. It's carved in the shape of a crouching tiger, cold, heavy, and utterly silent. Not a toy, not a pet rock, but a kind of insomnia talisman. You learn quickly that in ancient Chinese belief, jade isn't just pretty. It's thought to have cooling properties, both literal and spiritual. Good for calming the heart fire, as they'd say. And if your heart fire's out of control, well, good luck falling asleep with all that inner yang bouncing around. The emperor reaches for the jade tiger, presses it to his temple. Cold, heavy, strangely reassuring, like holding a worry stone. That also makes you feel vaguely invincible. You wonder if it works. He closes his eyes. You can almost hear his mind muttering, "Calm, calm, breathe like the bamboo." A faint knock breaks the silence. A eunuch, gliding more than walking, enters and whispers something about a dream interpreter arriving early. The emperor sighs. Of course, even his dreams, or lack thereof, are subject to bureaucratic oversight. Ah, the joys of absolute power. Now, here's a funny little wrinkle. This emperor, like many before and after him, is part insomniac, part spiritual experimenter, and part sleep ritual collector. At one point, he even tried to host an entire sleep council made up of physicians, astrologers, and yes, musicians with bamboo flutes to figure out why he wasn't sleeping well. Spoiler, it didn't help. Some historians still argue whether the sleeplessness was due to court stress, mercury-laced medicine, or simply too many late-night snacks of candied lotus seeds. There's probably all three. But what's certain is that the issue became so regular that certain night servants were trained to tiptoe in and whisper soft stories to him, gossip, legends, old poetry, you name it, just to soothe him into slumber. Imagine being a full-time bedtime storyteller for an emperor. Talk about job pressure. Tell me a tale that will end all my worries, and don't mess it up or you'll be telling it to the palace fish next. You drift closer to the carved jade screens, admiring the intricate dragons and clouds dancing in frozen elegance. Everything here is designed to suggest serenity, but you can almost sense how performative it is, like someone dressing up stress in silk robes. Outside the room, moonlight spills across a silent courtyard. Somewhere a water clock ticks gently, marking time not in minutes but in softly dripping droplets. It's supposed to help with sleep, you're told, like a fountain, but more imperial. Back inside, the Emperor finally sits up, muttering something about too many ghosts in the rice wine. A joke, maybe. Or maybe just another metaphor from someone whose dreams have begun to feel more vivid than his waking hours. You sit near the window now, letting the cool breeze pass over your arms. You feel the chill of the jade through the air itself. And in that moment, for just a breath, the palace doesn't feel so grand, so heavy, so ancient. It feels tired, and as the Emperor leans back again, eyes fluttering, half asleep at last, you think maybe, just maybe, the jade worked this time, but, of course, the night is still young, and this is only the beginning. You're still there, quietly lingering like the last note of a bamboo flute. The Emperor breathes slowly now, though not quite asleep. You watch his hand twitch slightly, as if warding off thoughts, or perhaps palace mosquitoes. The air grows, heavier, soaked in the scent of burned agar wood, curling from a bronze censer shaped like a sleeping phoenix. You move through the corridor just outside his chamber. The walls are painted in deep vermilion, with gold-leafed motifs of clouds and cranes, a reminder that everything here, even the ceilings, tries to look restful. But sleep doesn't come with decorations, does it? A servant glides past you, arms full of folded silk. She's preparing for what the palace calls the ritual of sleep invitation. No, it's not a party where you RSVP. It's more serious than that. In the inner chamber, the night eunuchs prepare what amounts to a theatrical production of bedtime, one that's been honed for generations. The script is always the same, combing the Emperor's hair precisely 108 times with a jade brush, then offering a bowl of snow fungus soup, not because he's hungry, but because someone once claimed it mimics the softness of a dream. You watch as the ritual begins again tonight. The eunuch, head bowed, steps soft as breath, lifts the jade comb. It glimmers faintly in the lamplight. The strokes begin, slow and rhythmic. 1, 2, 3. Each stroke is meant to draw tension from the body and scatter it into the ether like steam from a teacup. Some say the jade comb once belonged to Empress Luji herself, the first woman to rule China in her own right. Maybe she too had trouble sleeping. You wonder, briefly, if insomnia is hereditary among rulers, or perhaps it's just part of the job description. Outside the curtain, a priest-astrologer waits, clutching a tiny bell. He'll chime it once gently, when the stars align in a particular arrangement, believed to open the gateway of rest, according to old Taoist texts. You're skeptical, of course, but hey, modern people do stranger things for sleep. Remember that app that plays whale sounds through your pillow? A funny image flashes in your mind. The Emperor of China curled up with AirPods, listening to ambient thunderstorm playlists and sipping warm oat milk. Back to reality. The combing ends. The bell rings, barely audible. A sigh escapes from the Emperor's lips. Not quite sleep, but something adjacent to surrender. He leans back, muscles slackening. Now enters the incense reader. Yes, you heard that right. In certain dynasties, the scent of incense wasn't just for atmosphere. It was a diagnostic tool. If the smoke curled a certain way, the reader would interpret the Emperor's internal harmony or imbalance. One wrong wisp could mean changing the entire bedding set. Tonight, the smoke curls northward. That's apparently a good sign. The reader bows and exits silently, not even leaving footprints. You shift again toward the foot of the bed and notice a small scroll box carved from sandalwood. You know what's in it without opening. The Sleep Sutra, copied lovingly by hand by scholars who probably hadn't slept in days. This isn't a Buddhist text. It's a collection of ancient writings, lullabies, and soft-spoken philosophies meant to guide the mind down a gentler path. There's even a verse that simply repeats the character for quiet 20 times in a row. Visual ASMR, essentially. Emperor Wen of Han, you remember, used to have it read aloud to him, backward. Why backward? Maybe because he believed it tricked the brain into stopping its normal logic loops, kind of like trying to read your emails in a mirror. Now here's something curious. Historical records suggest that during the Sui dynasty, an emperor once ordered 300 court officials to test different bedtime routines and log their results on bamboo strips. These included things like sleep facing west after boiling earthen tea or whisper the name of your mother's hometown 12 times. You laugh quietly. The emperor's ancestors were basically running the first sleep study, with more robes, and the results unclear. Some historians still debate whether any of it worked. Others believe it was less about science and more about symbolism. If you go to bed believing your routine has cosmic backing, maybe that's half the battle. You step closer to a mural along the chamber wall. It shows a crane flying toward a full moon, trailing ribbons from its beak. A metaphor, perhaps, for the soul finding rest. Just then, the emperor whispers something. Have they lit the water clock? A eunuch nods, bows, and vanishes. Ah, yes, the water clock. A humble yet oddly profound invention. It uses the slow drip of water to mark hours, not with ticking hands, but with the rise of floating markers. A visual reminder that time flows, and eventually, so will sleep. You sit by the chamber's edge, now letting your thoughts drift. You notice the slight glow of moonlight on the jade inlays of the bedposts. You swear they hum, just faintly. Or maybe it's just your imagination, shaped by the stories of stones that could calm the wind. The emperor finally closes his eyes. For now. He won't stay asleep, of course. Not yet. But this part of the night has become a familiar loop. The rituals, the silence, the cool weight of jade. And you begin to understand how much of ruling an empire is about managing expectation, even of your own dreams. And as the incense curls higher and the bell stays silent, you remain there, watching. The breath of a dynasty slow to a rhythm, not quite restful but deeply practiced. The hush of the chamber lingers like breath on glass. You remain still, eyes adjusting to the slow dance of shadow and candlelight. The emperor sleeps, or tries to. Outside, the wind tiptoes across the courtyard stones, rustling the bamboo leaves with a sound like a lazy hand brushing silk. The palace, which by day resounds with officials and bronze gongs and scrolls being furiously unrolled, now purrs like a well-fed cat. But as you know by now, even when the emperor sleeps, the effort to keep him asleep is a full-time job. The door creaks again, soft as a dream. Enter the physician, but not just any physician. This one wears robes embroidered with cranes, walking on clouds, and carries no tools, at least not in the usual sense. Instead, he holds a small lacquered tray with slices of ginger arranged in a spiral like a hypnotic sun. And that's not all. Alongside the ginger, a thin vial of powdered jade. Yes, again with the jade. This one is called sleeping dragon dust. That's not just poetic, it's literal. The powder was carved from a rare nephrite figurine shaped like a coiled dragon, ground down by monks for 3 days straight. Supposedly it retained the dragon's essence of stillness, or maybe it just gave people something interesting to think about while waiting for sleep. You follow the physician as he kneels at a low table near the emperor's bed. He places the ginger slices in a small porcelain cup, pours in hot water, and lets the steam rise. The scent is sharp, earthy, a little sweet, inviting. He whispers to a nearby servant, "Only 6 sips, no more." Why? Because 7 would stir the spleen, and that would be a disaster. Obviously, you wonder if modern sleep specialists could get away with this logic. Ah, your insomnia. Clearly the spleen's in revolt. Let's add jade to your tea. The emperor, barely lifting his head, accepts the brew. He sips slowly and his eyes briefly close after the 4th sip, as if confirming the recipe is still valid after all these centuries. Now comes the moment you've been waiting for. The chant. Not loud, not spooky, just a soft string of syllables repeated gently by the physician while rotating a thumb ring carved from ivory. The chant sounds less like a prayer and more like someone coaxing a cat into a nap. Hei Rui, Jong Ye Bu Yao Ki, Light translation, roughly. Peaceful dreams, no midnight wandering. Ah yes, you almost forgot that sleepwalking was a thing even in the ancient world. One emperor allegedly got up mid-dream, marched to the temple, and tried to fire a statue of Confucius. Palace legend says he awoke halfway through the scolding and spent the rest of his reign politely ignoring that entire corner of the courtyard. Some say it was a ghost possession. Others say it was stress. Most agree it made for an awkward state dinner. The physician finishes his chant and places a single lotus seed next to the emperor's pillow, not to eat, just to be there. A symbolic gesture. Calm, fertility, and the idea that even the smallest things hold power when placed with intent. You feel that. In fact, you feel the whole room shift, ever so gently. Not literally, but in the way a room feels different when a baby finally falls asleep, or when the last guest leaves a dinner party and the house exhales. But here's a thought. What if all these rituals, all this pageantry, wasn't about fixing insomnia at all? What if it was just about respecting it? Some historians believe the court knew these remedies weren't real solutions. They were ceremonies of compassion, little ways of saying, "We see your tiredness, O Emperor. Let us tend to it." There's something sweet about that, don't you think? Of course, not all remedies were sweet. In fact, one of the weirder ones was a pillow soaked in goat milk and dried in the sun until stiff. Apparently, the tangy scent promoted dream stability. You make a face just thinking about it. The emperor tried it once, never again. But tonight, no goat milk in sight. Just ginger steam, sleepy chants, and that slow breath of someone who may finally be getting drowsy. Then, suddenly, he speaks. A dream came again. The river was walking. He doesn't open his eyes. He just whispers this to the air, as if to you. You feel a chill, not fear. Just the kind that comes when someone speaks the language of sleep directly into your ear, and you know what's next. The dream interpreter is waiting, but before that, one more step. A servant enters, balancing a thin silk sheet embroidered with constellations. They drape it over the emperor's shoulders like a blessing, not for warmth, but to protect the dream body as it leaves the physical one behind. You didn't even know you had a dream body, did you? Welcome to imperial sleep culture, friend. It's layered, literally. The emperor settles again, his hand falling limp to one side. A drop of jade tea clings to his lip, and for the briefest moment, the palace stops. No footsteps, no bells. Not even the wind, just quiet, just breath. And the knowledge that someone somewhere once spent their entire life trying to help another human being simply close their eyes in peace. You linger there beside the tea tray, watching the last curl of steam fade into nothingness. The silence doesn't break. It unspools gently like a thread pulled loose from a sleeve. You're still here, somewhere between shadow and history, in a palace so vast that even dreams get lost in its corridors. You notice now that the emperor's bed isn't quite like any other. It's not feather-stuffed or draped in animal skins. It's cold, hard, made of marble, its surface smoothed by time and polished until it gleams like moonlight on still water. It's a bed made not for comfort, but for control. This was no accident. Centuries ago, a physician from the Tang dynasty convinced the court that heat of the flesh breeds restlessness, and thus the stone bed was born. The logic? If the bed is cool, the heart stays cool. And if the heart stays cool, sleep comes faster. You press your hand to the edge of the slab. Even after hours, the marble is icy, as if it holds a grudge against the sun. And yet the emperor chooses this every night. Well, chooses may be generous. Imperial advisors were rather persuasive. One scroll even recommends placing fresh lotus petals under the bed each night to shield the emperor from heat ghosts. What's a heat ghost, you ask? No one knows. Probably just a poetic way to say sweaty dreams, but it worked its way into palace law, which means that somewhere, some poor servant had a lifelong job as royal petal distributor. Not glamorous. The room grows dimmer as the oil lamp flickers low. A servant glides in to replace it, carrying a fresh lamp shaped like a sleeping carp. The new flame crackles softly, casting golden ripples along the jade floor tiles, and just as it's placed beside the emperor's bed, you spot the cushion, not the pillow, no, the cushion beneath the emperor's knees. A rectangular piece of finely woven silk, embroidered with tiny mandarin ducks. It's positioned to encourage a certain sleeping posture, sideways, knees bent, one arm tucked beneath the cheek. Why? Because according to an ancient medical text, to sleep like the fetus is to sleep as in heaven. But here's the odd part. Some emperors took this further. They commissioned posture audits. That's right. Every few nights, someone would quietly enter the room, observe the emperor's sleep position and record it. His Majesty rested in the dragon curl. His Majesty's left elbow moved thrice. Imagine your Fitbit report written in poetic Mandarin. These audits were believed to reveal the emperor's emotional state, curling too tightly, anxious, sprawled too wide, overconfident, sleeping on his stomach, possibly a sign of political rebellion. Yes, really. The records were taken seriously, sometimes more seriously than actual policy. One minister once delayed tax reform because the emperor rolled left 3 times in a single night. That minister, by the way, was fired for being too literal. As your fingers trace the edge of the jade bedpost, you notice another strange feature, the headrest. It's not a pillow as you know it. It's a block of ceramic, hollow inside, sometimes filled with dried mint leaves or sandalwood shavings. The coolness and scent, combined, were believed to promote lucid dreaming and prevent nightmares. Some people say that the firmness trains the mind to float. Others say it's just a neck ache waiting to happen. The emperor stirs slightly. You can almost feel his spine adjusting against the slab. No blankets tonight. Just a single silk sheet woven so fine it whispers when it moves. This exact routine, stone bed, posture cushion, ceramic pillow, mint-scented silk, hasn't changed in years, maybe decades. Why? Because in the palace, consistency is comfort. When every scroll matters, when every breath is watched, the idea that your bed is exactly the same every night becomes a kind of armor, a nightly ritual of surrender without chaos. You step back a little, noticing the paneling on the far wall. It glows faintly with mother-of-pearl inlay, catching the lamplight just right. A flock of cranes in mid-flight. They never land, always circling, forever weightless. There's poetry in that. The emperor shifts again, exhaling with a faint wheeze. Some say this posture, this bed, this stillness, it was all a show. That deep down, he dreaded sleep, because sleep brings dreams. And dreams in his world were never just dreams. They were omens. But for now he is still, and in that stillness the room seems to swell with something ancient and gentle. The kind of hush that feels like a blanket draped across your shoulders by someone who understands your restlessness. You remain at the edge of the bed, one hand resting lightly on the cold stone. You feel your own breath, slow to match his. 1. 2. Hold, exhale. A soft hum rises from the corridor outside, perhaps a servant singing low, or maybe just the wind through the bamboo. You can't quite tell. But it doesn't matter, because tonight, at least for a while, the emperor is still. The room is quiet. The world beyond this chamber can wait, and you too are drifting. The hush is steady now, like silk drawn across stone. Quiet but unbreakable. You remain near the jade bed, your fingers still tingling from the cold of its frame. The emperor seems to have fallen into a light slumber, though his brows twitch, from time to time, as if chasing thoughts that outran him. It's in this moment of near sleep that another layer of the imperial sleep ritual unfurls. Jade itself. You've seen it already. A comb here, a tea powder there. But now you realize the emperor's entire sleep environment is infused with this mythical mineral, and not just because it's pretty. To the ancient Chinese, jade wasn't just decoration. It was medicine, energy, philosophy carved into stone. And in the matter of sleep, it was considered both a calmative and a conduit. Cold to the touch, believed to cool the qi, your internal energy, and dispel the fire that causes restlessness. You step toward a small chest near the emperor's bedside, unlocked and unassuming. Inside it, slender jade tubes wrapped in silk. They're not ornaments, they're sleep tools. One is shaped like a spoon, curved perfectly to fit beneath the cheekbone. Another is long and smooth, meant to be laid across the stomach. There's even one with tiny grooves along its side, used for gently rubbing the temples in slow circular motions. Tonight, none of the attendants touch them, but they're there, waiting. As if knowing that on a different night, when sleep is more stubborn, they'll be needed. A soft creak interrupts your thoughts. It's the night guard changing shift, but unlike any security detail you've known, this one isn't here to protect the Emperor from intruders. He's here to protect his sleep. The Imperial Guard walks with deliberate rhythm, one step every few seconds, sandals brushing stone like a metronome. No shouting, no swords clashing, just the measured beat of walking. It turns out this sound serves a purpose. Historical records describe it as the drumless lullaby, a pace so steady and familiar that it becomes comforting background noise, lulling the Emperor into deeper sleep through sheer predictability. Some modern researchers might call it white noise, but in the Han Dynasty, it was elite insomnia therapy, and the sound is oddly soothing. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2. You find your own breathing syncing with the steps. It's hypnotic, like a pendulum swung not for timekeeping but for dreaming. The Emperor stirs slightly, then stills again. Somewhere deep in his mind, perhaps he hears the footsteps too, chasing him down the corridors of a dream palace. And now, another figure enters, an older man, hunched slightly, with a long, ink-stained sleeve. He carries a scroll and a brush. His name isn't known in most records, but his role is unforgettable. He is the dream scribe. Each morning, the Emperor's dreams are recorded, not just remembered, but written with reverence. Because dreams in this time are not private. They're public omens. Tonight, the dream scribe won't write, but he waits in case the Emperor murmurs something. A word, a phrase, anything that might be harvested for meaning. One Emperor reportedly whispered, "The moon fell into the well." That phrase alone prompted 3 weeks of astrological recalibration and a last-minute sacrifice of 2 white ducks. Yes, ducks, you stifle a smile. But that's how seriously these dreams were taken. Some emperors like Wu of Han even built dream gardens, elaborate courtyards designed specifically to appear in dreams. Real pavilions planted with fragrant trees where the emperor would meditate each evening and then hope to return in sleep. Think of it as a lucid dreaming setup with palace funding. And jade. It played a role there too. Dream gardens were sometimes lined with jade stepping stones, which scholars believed created a bridge between the conscious and subconscious. You wonder what dreams the emperor has tonight. A river walking, a falling moon, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe just blackness and stillness. A victory if you ask anyone who's ever had 3 cups of tea at 10 p.m. and regretted everything. Outside, the wind has stopped entirely. Even the bamboo seems frozen in reverence. The guard's footsteps fade, replaced by a new sound, a soft rattling like beads in a gourd. You turn and see a servant gently shaking a sleep rattle made from pear wood and jade chips. Not for noise, for rhythm. In some traditions, this soft rattle was believed to frighten away dream demons and refocus the sleeping mind. And even if it didn't, the sound it made, a whispery clatter, was oddly satisfying. Like a breeze rustling dried leaves, a subtle lullaby of the imperial court. You sit once more beside the bed. The emperor is breathing deeply now, not snoring, just the slow, even rhythm of someone walking along the edge of true sleep. And as you listen to the whisper of jade, the tap of measured footsteps and the faint brush of a scribe's sleeve, you begin to understand something. Here, sleep isn't escape, it's a ceremony, it's work. And even in rest, the emperor is still ruling. Quietly in dreams, outside dawn is still a rumor. The sky hasn't even begun to pale. But here, within the thick walls of the palace, time slows to a crawl, or perhaps it's simply stopped altogether, waiting respectfully while the emperor attempts the delicate task of staying asleep. You're still in the chamber, but now your eyes are drawn toward the lacquered screens to the left of the jade bed. Carved phoenixes and twisting clouds hide a small alcove where another ritual takes quiet shape. This one is musical. Enter the midnight ensemble. a trio of musicians whose job isn't to perform, but to hover at the edge of hearing. Their instruments are modest by imperial standards. A small mouth organ, a set of hollow wooden blocks, and something you wouldn't expect in a royal chamber, a bamboo rainstick. They don't play unless requested. But sometimes, even the silence needs softening. Tonight they're summoned by a subtle gesture from the night eunuch, a mere nod, really. And just like that, the music begins. Gentle, unhurried, full of pauses. The mouth organ breathes a note that curls in the air like smoke, while the wooden blocks chime with a timbre somewhere between a knock and a whisper. The rainstick murmurs faintly, like drizzle through trees or someone pouring dreams back into the emperor's ear. You feel your shoulders loosen just hearing it. The yi. Music isn't meant to entertain. It's a sleep scaffold, sound arranged like bamboo scaffolding, holding the fragile structure of dreams together. Historical notes describe this kind of music as yin yin zhule, joy of the hidden sound, meant to tickle the ear, not command it. Some scholars believe certain emperors even had preferred sleep scales, specific arrangements of notes that aligned with their birth charts. One emperor apparently favored a composition based on the call of the golden oriole, played so softly you could only hear it if you were already halfway asleep. You sit closer to the musicians, invisible to them but close enough to see their fingers, twitch like nervous butterflies. They're well trained, of course, but playing music no one is supposed to really hear. That's an art form all its own. And it turns out, this musical ritual wasn't just for the emperor. The court believed that sound shaped sleep, not only in depth, but in content. Want to dream of flying? Use the reed flute. Want peaceful dreams? Wooden blocks tuned to the rhythm of water. You wonder if this was a kind of imperial ASMR. Carefully crafted sounds for maximum auditory delight, minus the weird whispering into microphones. The emperor exhales again, turning slightly in his cold bed. His fingers twitch once, twice, then go still. That's the cue. The musicians stop in perfect unison, as if the air itself pressed a mute button. They vanish behind the screens like they were never there. No bows, no applause, just silence. You glance to the corner where the guards have returned to their pacing. Still that slow, deliberate 1-2 beat, so faint now, it could be the echo of your own heart. Then comes something strange, a soft metallic clink from the cabinet near the foot of the bed. You move to investigate, carefully. Inside, nestled among folded silks and bundles of dried herbs, lies a wind chime, but not like any you've seen. It's made of amber, strung with threads of horsehair and carved into crescent shapes. You recognize this. It's the emergency dream talisman, used only when the emperor is too deep in dream. Trapped, unreachable, muttering in tongues, eyes fluttering in REM like a flag in a storm. It's not needed tonight, but its presence tells you everything. Even in sleep, the emperor may wander too far. The amber chime is meant to gently call his soul back, not by waking him, oh no, but by coaxing the dream self to return, like a dog whistle for wandering spirits. Some traditions even instructed that the chime be rung over a bowl of warm rice water to anchor the sound with substance, because in the palace even metaphors come with practical attachments. You replace the chime with care, letting the cabinet door click closed, and now, for a moment, everything is perfectly still again. No footsteps, no music, no rustling silk or crackling oil lamp, only the emperor, sleeping at last. And you, watching like a quiet moonbeam. You think about all the things you've seen, the jade tools, the rhythm walkers, the musicians trained in near invisibility, and you realize this wasn't about finding sleep, this was about surrounding it, creating a world so carefully balanced, so intricately designed, that sleep has no choice but to drift in, like a guest too polite to refuse the invitation. You exhale. Your breath matches the hush. And just before your own thoughts begin to wander, you notice something else, a soft smile, just barely on the emperor's face, a dream perhaps, or maybe just the knowledge that for tonight he doesn't have to rule the waking world, he can rest in the one the palace has built just for him. The room has fallen into a rare kind of silence, not emptiness but fullness, The type of quiet that feels layered, as if every sound is still here, just folded carefully under silk and moonlight. You shift your gaze now toward a side table, near the foot of the bed. The candlelight flickers gently over its surface, revealing ink stains, half-unrolled scrolls, and a fine brush laid askew, still damp with midnight use. And then you see it. Calligraphy. The emperor, it turns out, doesn't count sheep, he writes, not letters, not edicts. He writes characters over and over, sometimes the word for quiet, jing, sometimes peace, ping, and sometimes just a single brush stroke repeated 100 times in a trance-like rhythm. It's a meditative act, a kind of sleep, ritual with ink. You move closer and catch a glimpse of tonight's scribble. It's the character Meng, dream. Bold at first, then sloppier, softer, as if sleep was catching him mid-stroke. The court calls it dream-walking with the brush. The act of allowing the mind to meander until the brush leads you off the page and into your own subconscious. It's not a formal practice. It's not even taught. It's just something emperors picked up over time, especially the ones who couldn't. Stop thinking. And let's be honest, they all couldn't stop thinking. There's even a legend about one ruler, Emperor Zhao, who once filled an entire scroll with the character for rice, just because he was hungry and insomniac. The next day, he ordered congee for every official in the court. No one dared to ask why. You smile. Sleep-deprived decisions make history too. You run your finger along a corner of the scroll. The ink is fragrant, rich and musky. It was probably mixed just hours ago by palace scribes. Traditional ink here is made from soot, glue, and sometimes bits of pearl dust, not for shine, but for purity of mind. Yes, even ink had spiritual hygiene. A nearby servant begins cleaning the writing. Desk, carefully, as if touching memory itself. He doesn't erase the calligraphy, he lets it dry. Tomorrow morning it'll be rolled up, labeled, and archived, because even sleepy scrawls by an emperor are considered state property. They're called midnight orders, even when they're not orders. A tradition started centuries ago by a particularly poetic monarch who once declared, "A sleepy mind is closest to the gods." No one argued, and not all writings were so abstract. Some emperors left entire journals of their half-dream thoughts. Emperor Liang once detailed a vision of riding a fish across the sky, which prompted a short-lived fashion trend where court officials wore fins on their sleeves. Briefly, very briefly, a strange sort of democracy exists in dreams, doesn't it? Even emperors can't control what shows up. A duck in a hat, a collapsing pagoda, your third-grade math teacher reciting Confucian poetry. So what did they do? They turned it into art, and that's what you see now. Ink as a bridge, connecting waking, pressure and sleeping mystery. You settle near the window, the air cool against your skin, and look at the brush again. It's worn thin from use, probably handmade from rabbit hair. Soft, forgiving, precise, it doesn't demand. It listens. And suddenly, you understand why the emperor picked up the brush on nights like this. It gives shape to restlessness. It gives rhythm to silence. And unlike advisors or generals or heaven's omens, the paper never talks back. Outside, the courtyard lanterns flicker. Not out of necessity, they're lit just dimly enough to suggest presence, not attention. Like a cat sleeping with one eye open, you glance back at the emperor. His chest rises slowly. His hand, earlier twitching, now rests flat on the cool stone. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe it's the music. Maybe it's just ink finally drying on. An anxious mind. But he's asleep, fully, finally. And not just asleep. He looks light. You close your own eyes for a moment, letting the quiet settle into your bones. If someone asked you now, how did the emperors of old fight insomnia? You'd know the answer wasn't just jade or music or cool beds. It was this, 1,000 tiny acts, rituals that slowed time, quieted noise, and gave worry something to hold, even if just a brush, even if just a word. The scent reaches you first, sweet and slightly smoky, drifting in like a lazy idea. It curls around your senses as gently as silk falling through air. You open your eyes to find a tray of food being placed near the emperor's bedside. Yes, Food. At this hour, absolutely. Because in the grand constellation of imperial sleep rituals, there is a star devoted solely to midnight snacks, or as the court called them, tranquility offerings. A poetic name for what is essentially a very luxurious snack break. Tonight's tray is modest by palace standards, which still means it could feed a family of 6. A small bowl of bird's nest soup, steamed gently with rock sugar, a lotus seed cake, dense but fragrant, and a glistening spoonful of honey-soaked dates, artfully arranged to look like sleeping koi fish. You blink, yes. The dates are shaped like koi fish. Why? Because symbolism, of course. The koi represents peace, perseverance, and gentle flow, all things that you apparently need in your stomach to drift into a royal REM cycle. The emperor stirs just slightly, lips moving faintly in sleep, nose twitching like he's catching the scent. He doesn't open his eyes, but one hand, like a well-trained habit, reaches toward the tray. It's a ritual gesture, not hunger. He picks up the lotus seed cake, and now you learn something odd. In many dynasties, emperors were taught to eat something sweet before bed, not for blood sugar, for mood. The belief was that sugar tames the fire in the liver, soothes the spleen, and invites sweeter dreams. And yes, dreams could be rated like tea. Bitter. Avoid sour plums. Joyful. Thank your honey-soaked almonds. One court physician went so far as to design a dream diet, a rotating calendar of bedtime meals meant to steer the dreamer toward specific topics. Want to dream of dragons? Try black sesame porridge. Hoping for visions of your ancestors. Warm almond milk with snow fungus. You can't help but think, was this early dream programming? They say you are what you eat, but in the Forbidden City it was more like, you dream what you digest. Some historians still debate the effectiveness. Others point out that emperors often dreamed of food anyway. One emperor reportedly woke in a cold sweat, shouting, "Too much vinegar," despite not having touched a drop in weeks. You watch as the emperor finishes the cake in slow, sleepy bites. No rush. This is a sacred slowness, the kind that can only exist when no one dares to interrupt you. Next, he sips a spoonful of the bird's nest soup. Not everyone knows this, but the texture is controversial. It's gelatinous, vaguely sweet, and described by one modern scholar as if velvet were edible and a little confused. You chuckle, but the emperor, he sighs, satisfied. And in that sigh, you feel something shift in the room. Not physically, but emotionally. Because food here is not just fuel, it's memory, comfort, permission to let go. Even the spoon he uses has meaning. It's made of white jade, said to calm the pulse when touched to the lips. Inscriptions run along its handle, quiet reminders of peace, health, and longevity. One of them simply says, "Tonight is gentle." You like that. You want to write it on your own wall. A servant enters, barely audible, and removes the empty bowl. The tray disappears like a dream fulfilled, and now the air is different, warmer, smoother. The emperor's breath deepens, as if each bite helped weigh down his consciousness just enough to let sleep take over completely. But you're not done yet, because in a shadowed corner, another figure steps forward, the food astrologer. Yes, that was a real job. His role? To consult the stars and determine what bedtime food combinations would avoid lunar interference. No ginger during waning moons, no beans on eclipse nights, and never ever eat lychees if Mars is in retrograde. You raise an eyebrow. Even in the modern world, people avoid caffeine at night. How different is that, really? Some say these rituals were more superstition than science, but others argue it was about building a bedtime world, one in which everything from sound to scent to sugar was aligned toward rest. And suddenly, it doesn't seem so strange. You, too, have your late-night rituals, a certain mug, a certain playlist, a certain way the blanket folds around your knees. The emperor just had a bigger budget. Back at the bed, he's fully still now. No twitching fingers, no furrowed brow, just the faint sweetness of lotus seeds on his breath, and maybe, just maybe, a dream koi swimming somewhere soft and slow. Stillness has settled thickly now like a warm mist. You don't dare move too suddenly, afraid you might ripple the calm that's finally taken root in the Emperor's chamber. But as always in this palace of sleeping rituals, stillness does not mean nothing is happening. From the inner sanctum of the room, a servant appears, moving with the kind of practiced quiet that feels less like walking and more like gliding. In her hands is something unexpected, a mask, not a mask of disguise. Not a performer's prop, a sleep mask unlike any you've seen. This one is carved from translucent jade, thin enough to catch the flicker of candlelight, etched with delicate cloud motifs. On the inside, it's lined with the softest silk, dyed with crushed orchid petals. The outer jade stays cool all night. The servant gently fastens it over the Emperor's eyes without disturbing him. She does it like she's done it 1,000 times, which she has. This isn't just for blocking light. This mask is ritual armor, the last barrier between a ruler and the world. You notice how the jade conforms to the contours of his face. It does a perfect fit, custom shape to the Emperor's brow. There are even tiny perforations near the temples, each one supposedly aligned with acupuncture points for restoration, clarity, and wrinkle prevention. Naturally, it's a small but meaningful moment. A man who commands armies and harvests and taxes, voluntarily blindfolding himself in the name of vulnerability, and he trusts the mask to protect him, not from assassins, but from dreams that wander too far, from visions that press too close. You sit back and marvel. Even this mask has a backstory. In the archives, there's a scroll from the Song dynasty detailing the first recorded sleep shield used by a royal consort. It was originally designed not for dreams, but for beauty. She believed jade's coolness would keep her eyes bright, but over time it was said that the mask also brought calm and more restful sleep. Soon after, the emperor wanted one too, naturally. By the Ming dynasty, jade sleep masks had become customary for the elite. Some were embedded with tiny gem fragments, amethyst for peaceful dreams, amber for dream recall, and tiger's eye for courage during astral projection. Yes, that was a real concern. Some emperors believed they left their bodies in sleep and wanted protection during their nighttime adventures. So the mask became a kind of spiritual seatbelt. Others simply enjoyed how luxurious it felt. Back in the room, the emperor has stilled even further. The weight of the mask presses gently onto his face, anchoring him deeper into the bed into the night. And now the servant adds one final touch, a sachet placed beneath the pillow. Inside, crushed mint, dried chrysanthemum petals, a touch of sandalwood, and get this, powdered oyster shell. Why? Because the palace herbalists believed it soothed the heart spirit and cooled the liver wind. You're still not entirely sure what the liver wind is, but it sounds like something you don't want flapping around at 2 a.m. The sachet smells faintly like a forest just after it rains. You breathe it in, it works on you too. And here's the kicker. The emperor won't even know it's there. The sachet isn't for the conscious mind, it's for the sleeping self. A subtle perfume meant to guide the dreams gently, like a quiet boatman steering through fog. Outside, the guards are pacing again. Slower now. The night is aging, or perhaps just relaxing. And as you sit in the hush, you realize this isn't sleep as a biological function. This is sleep as a work of art. Every detail, every scent, every sound, every item placed just so is part of a centuries-old composition, a choreography of calm, a masterwork of stillness. You've seen 9 layers of it now, and still the night holds more. But for this moment, it is enough to watch the emperor sleep beneath jade and silk, with soft music gone quiet and a sachet humming gently beneath his neck. He doesn't stir, he doesn't need to. He's floating, cradled by ceremony, buoyed by belief. And so are you. It's well past midnight now. Though the palace doesn't keep time the way you do, there are no ticking clocks here, just the sound of water dripping, faint and precise, from a carved dragon spout into a bronze basin. You turn toward the sound, following it down a corridor just beyond the emperor's sleeping chamber. Here in this quiet annex is one of the strangest, most beautiful features of the Forbidden City's night, the Dream Log Pavilion. It isn't a room exactly, more like a shrine, and its entire purpose is to record the emperor's dreams, even when he doesn't remember them, even when he doesn't have them. A dream in this world is not just a personal experience, it's a state affair, a coded message from the heavens, an omen wrapped in metaphor. And if an emperor fails to remember his dreams, the court finds a way to remember for him. You step inside the pavilion. It smells of ink and lotus root parchment. The walls are lined with scrolls, each one labeled by date and imperial reign. 7th month, year of the golden horse, 3rd night after the eclipse. That kind of thing. A scribe is already at work, brush in hand. He doesn't look up. He's writing slowly, reverently, not taking dictation, interpreting. Tonight's entry is speculative. The emperor hasn't spoken since falling asleep, but the scribe records the symbols seen earlier, the koi-shaped dates, the sleeping pose, even the precise curve of the jade mask. From these, he weaves a possible dream. The emperor rode a cloud of rice toward a silver mountain. There, a fox with the face of his first tutor bowed and vanished. Peaceful omens, no adjustment needed. You blink. It's like dream fan fiction, officially sanctioned, but make no mistake, these entries matter. In past dynasties, entire policy decisions were based on dreams. One emperor, upon dreaming of a turtle eating the moon, postponed a naval expedition for 2 years. Another, after dreaming of weeping bamboo, reformed the tax system. There were even dream committees, whose sole job was to debate whether a particular dream signaled agricultural success or invasion by horsemen. Some historians still argue about the validity of this, but others point out that when you're an emperor under pressure, your dreams are sometimes the only place you're allowed to be unsure, and so they're recorded, kept, analyzed. It's a bit like therapy, but with more phoenix metaphors. You watch as the scribe sprinkles fine sand over the scroll to dry the ink. Then he ties the parchment with a red silk thread, places it into a lacquered tube, and slides it into its compartment. Tomorrow morning, it will be read, privately, by 2 people, the emperor himself and the minister of celestial harmonies. Yes, that's a real title. If the dream is troubling, a new sleep ritual may be prescribed. More mint, less lotus, different music scale. You find a strange comfort in it. The idea that someone is paying attention to what your subconscious is doing. That your inner chaos is being taken seriously by men in hats made of goose feathers. You glance at the wall to your right. There's a mural, faded but lovely. It shows a man sleeping beneath a willow tree while a spirit crane watches over him. The inscription reads, "To sleep is to step into the other world, wearing no shoes. No shoes, no defenses, only dreams." You sit a while longer in the pavilion, listening to the water clock nearby, a gentle drip as constant as breath. And just before you leave, you notice a small alcove with a low table. Upon it lies a folded cloth. Curious, you lift it. Beneath it, the emperor's first recorded dream. He was 5 years old. The scroll is short, simple. The boy dreamed of a tree that grew noodles. He asked the tree to stop. It said, yes. You smile. Even the Son of Heaven once dreamed nonsense. Even the ruler of millions once needed rest. You step out of the pavilion, back into the corridor. The air is cooler now, but not cold. The silence thicker, as if it too has begun to drowse. And as you pass beneath a carved archway, you see the faint glow of the emperor's chamber, still peaceful, untouched. He sleeps, and somewhere inside him, maybe a tree still grows noodles. You return to the main chamber just in time to see a quiet flurry of activity begin again. Not loud, not rushed, just intentional. The emperor remains asleep, peaceful and still beneath his jade mask. But across the room, his consorts, yes, plural, are arriving. Not to wake him, of course. Heaven forbid. They're here for something the court delicately refers to as the sleep proximity ritual. It's a bizarre, beautiful, and thoroughly awkward tradition that once dominated life in the inner court. A rotational system where favored consorts would lie near the emperor during sleep, not for romantic reasons but for energetic alignment. Let's pause here. Yes, energetic alignment. According to certain schools of imperial thought, a sleeping emperor was like a lute string, finely tuned but delicate. If too tight, restless; too slack, indecisive. The presence of a consort nearby, breathing in tandem, was said to balance the emperor's yin and yang, especially if chosen according to that week's astrological pattern. It was less about passion and more about airflow. You try not to chuckle. Tonight, 2 consorts have been selected. Their roles are ceremonial. Each will lie on a separate couch at opposite ends of the bedchamber, wrapped in specific colors, and remain absolutely still. Unless summoned, one wears lavender silk chosen for her calming presence. The other, in pale yellow, was picked because she once dreamed of a white turtle and has been considered lucky ever since. No one's risking poor REM cycles under her watch. Each of them carries a small pouch of herbs tied with red string. Inside, mugwort, dried orange peel, and a few shavings of sandalwood. Together it's called Chen Jing Xiang, the scent of calm submission. Which is, let's be honest, a little unsettling as a name, but surprisingly pleasant to the nose. As they take their positions, you learn something else, something more competitive. You see, while the ritual is supposed to be spiritual, there's definitely a ranking system involved. The closer you get to the emperor's sleeping head, the more favor you're presumed to have, which has over time created a somewhat absurd palace competition of who can nap most beautifully without actually sleeping. Historical anecdotes describe imperial contests like stillness challenges, where consorts would lie motionless for hours to prove their poise. Sleep-breathing competitions, judged by night eunuchs based on who had the most graceful chest rise. One woman even perfected the art of dream smiling, a facial expression meant to suggest serene joy without actual REM. She was promoted. You try to imagine modern dating with this level of performance. Sorry, your nap posture didn't. Past the 3rd round, please hand in your silk sash. Back in the room, the lavender consort closes her eyes. Her hands rest on her stomach, perfectly symmetrical. The yellow consort remains upright just a moment longer, gazing at the emperor. Not longing, not love, just focus. She bows slightly, then reclines. The room is balanced now, spiritually and spatially. To modern eyes, this may seem like overkill. But within the Forbidden City, every breath matters, every pose, every inhalation coordinated like the final step of a tea ceremony, and sleep is not seen as absence, it is presence rearranged. Now here's where it gets even stranger. On certain nights, especially near seasonal changes, the consorts were tasked not only with being present, but also with transmitting dreams. That's right. They were taught breathing techniques and guided imagery to suggest themes into the emperor's dreams. Love, wisdom, clarity, even specific animals or symbols. A tiger when strength was needed, a duck when diplomacy was required. Tree when patience ran thin. There's a record of one consort dreaming about peaches 3 nights in a row, and the emperor reportedly woke up craving fruit, then ordered a new orchard planted. Was it real? Who knows? But the ritual worked, because someone believed in it enough to act. You glance at the emperor again, still asleep, still breathing slow and steady beneath his jade mask, and somehow, even though he has no idea, 2 people are lying nearby, breathing, in harmony, dreaming the right dreams on his behalf. You wonder if anyone's ever done that for you, dreamed something gentle to help pull your own mind out of the spiral, offered softness just by being near, and suddenly this odd ritual doesn't feel so strange, it feels kind. Outside, the wind stirs again, rustling the bamboo faintly. The candles have burned low, and the oil lamp casts long shadows across the chamber floor. The consorts do not move, and neither do you, because in this moment everything is perfectly still, perfectly absurd, and perfectly human. You almost don't notice it at first, the faint rhythm building in the air like a thought taking shape. But then it's unmistakable, a soft, percussive tapping, so light it barely rises above the sound of your own heartbeat. From behind a carved screen in the far corner of the room, music returns, but not the sleepy drone of flutes or the distant tinkling of zithers. This time it's something different. It's rhythm. The court sleep musicians, a different ensemble from earlier, have reassembled in the shadow of night. This group specializes in sound textures, the oral equivalent of massaging the back of your brain. Tonight, they bring out something rarely heard, even in the palace, an instrument made of amber and antler, a kind of ancient marimba. The keys, carefully carved from polished deer antler, are laid over a bed of soft amber stones. Each tap produces a rounded wooden tone, like if a cloud made a thunk. Next to it, a court musician slowly circles a sleep gong, not a big one, tiny, about the size of a dumpling. It's made of tiger's eye, and it doesn't ring, it hums. A soft, warm frequency that rolls through the room like a whisper in a blanket. These are part of a palace tradition known as night shaping. It's the practice of sculpting sound not to entertain or wake, but to guide, to usher the dreamer deeper into subconscious realms, using frequency, tone, and time. It's not music exactly, it's architecture for the soul. The idea was simple, but profound. If your waking hours are noisy with politics, chaos, and clanging gongs, then your sleeping world must be softened deliberately, like stones in a river, slowly worn smooth by the hands of night. You settle near the musicians. Their hands move in deliberate hypnotic circles. One taps the amber bars in a steady pattern, 3 slow, 1 quick, 3 slow, 1 quick. Another lightly brushes a silk drum, taut with goosefeather parchment, emitting a sound not unlike a sigh. And just when you think it's settled into repetition, they stop, mid-beat, on purpose. Because here's the trick. Unexpected silence is just as powerful as sound. One ancient musical treatise called this technique the falling cloud. The idea is to interrupt the listener's expectations, not to jar them awake, but to soften the mind. Like a blanket tugged gently over your feet, you realize then, as you watch the flicker of the lantern and the outline of the emperor's breath, beneath the silk sheet, that this is not a performance, it's care, a kind of lullaby built by engineers of emotion. You wonder, did the musicians have to practice for years to play like this? To know exactly when a room was ready for silence? Of course they did. In fact, it's recorded that apprentices spent 6 months learning to stand still, just to understand how presence alone affected the energy of a room. You shift slightly, trying not to make a sound. Even you, outsider to this dream palace, feel the weight of attention these performers bring. They're not playing at the emperor, they're playing to the room, to you, to themselves. And the emperor, wrapped in silence and shadow and subtle vibration, breathes deeper. You're told that some emperors had favorite frequencies. Emperor Xuan preferred notes played near the heart chakra. Emperor Yuan wanted the sound of bells hidden in fog. This wasn't about notes, it was about sensation. There's even a note from one royal physician who described music as sleep acupuncture, stimulating the body's dream meridians without ever touching skin. The gong rings again, softly, and you feel your own breath match its pulse. The consorts remain still. The musicians slow their hands, the tones drift, unravel, dissolve, and then stillness, but not empty stillness, full stillness. Like the moment a story ends and the hush that follows becomes the most important part. In this chamber of slumber, sound has been wielded like incense, folded, lit, and left to curl invisibly into the air, guiding the soul without a single word. The emperor does not stir. He is fully asleep now, perhaps dreaming of amber stones and soft thunder, or perhaps not dreaming at all. Sometimes, the best dream is simply the deep blank sea of nothing. The palace musicians bow even though no one sees, and they leave, no footsteps, only presence, only peace. It's the hour just before dawn, the deepest part of the night when the stars seem to hum a little louder and dreams begin to slip away like steam from a teacup. In the stillness, your gaze drifts to the head of the emperor's jade bed. There, carved into the paneling, is something easy to overlook. A pattern of interlocking clouds surrounding a small jade medallion. You've seen it before, but only now do you realize what it is. It's a Gu Yun Chen Zhen, or in less poetic terms, a sleep compass. Yes, really, an ancient feng shui invention installed in imperial bedrooms to orient sleep direction according to cosmic harmony. Tonight, the emperor's head points east-northeast, aligning with what palace geomancers considered the most restorative flow of qi for dream clarity and emotional balance. No pillow flipping necessary, This orientation has been calculated months in advance, taking into account seasonal energies, planetary shifts, and the Emperor's birth element. He's a wood type, if you're curious. Some would call it superstition. Others would say it's just exquisite bedtime interior design. You move quietly along the base of the wall, running your fingers along the grain of the floor tiles, each one slightly angled to subtly direct ki flow toward the bed. This was not accidental. The entire room, from the placement of the curtains to the height of the incense burners, has been engineered for sleep. And it works. Because now nearly every soul in the room is somewhere between rest and dream. The Emperor lies still, his jade mask cool against his skin. His fingers curled slightly, not in tension but in release. His breathing now nearly imperceptible. If not for the gentle rise of his chest, you'd think he had become part of the stone beneath him. The consorts remain perfectly poised, breathing in rhythm. Their dreams, if any, are silent and still, like koi sleeping beneath winter ice. And just when you think the night has offered up all its mysteries, another one appears. A servant enters with a ceramic pillow, not to replace the one beneath the Emperor's neck, but to place beside him. This one is shaped like a mountain, glazed, Enceladon with tiny ridges etched into its sides. At first it seems decorative, but then you hear the faintest whisper, a wind escaping from within. This is no ordinary pillow, it's a dream vessel. The pillow is hollow, containing a carefully calculated mix of herbs and minerals designed to generate scent based on the temperature of the sleeper's skin. As the Emperor's warmth gently heats the vessel, a fragrance begins to release, subtle, woody, slightly floral. You recognize it from earlier in the pavilion, chrysanthemum, sandalwood, and something faintly minty. But here's the magic. That scent isn't just pleasant, it's mapped. The idea behind the dream vessel is this: scent can shape dream architecture. Introduce the right note at the right depth of sleep, and you might guide the sleeper's mind like a gentle hand steering a paper boat. Historical records show that dream vessels were used selectively, especially before important decisions. One emperor, anxious about a war council, requested his vessel be filled with plum blossom and tiger balm, hoping to dream of strategy and courage. He dreamed of a carp leaping over a waterfall. He cancelled the war. You lean in and breathe, just faintly, the edges of the emperor's dream world. It smells like dusk in spring, clean, cool melancholy in the nicest way. Now across the room a servant enters carrying a scroll. It's a dream map. Hand-drawn by the court's astrologer, it shows a symbolic landscape tailored to tonight's arrangements. A meandering river, a quiet mountain, a field of sleeping cranes. No one will show this to the Emperor. It's not meant for him. It's meant for the spirit of the room. The scroll is unrolled and placed on a low altar in the corner. A single candle is lit before it. This isn't performance, it's belief. That when the energy of a space is aligned with the desired dream, the sleeper will naturally wander into it, like entering a well-lit hallway instead of a dark maze. And in this moment, you see something that's easy to miss. This entire palace, the jade, the masks, the music, the snacks, the dreams, it's all been orchestrated with one intention: to make sleep sacred. Not something to conquer, not something to resent, but something to honor. And as the candle flickers beside the dream map, you close your eyes for just a moment and let the scent from the dream vessel settle into your own breath. You feel lighter, not because you're sleepy, but because you're finally in a place where everything is designed to let go. And you realize, if only we treated our own rest like this, not as a pause, but as a practice. The Emperor sleeps on, unaware of the mountain beneath his pillow, unaware that his dreams are being gently ushered through celestial doorways by scent, sound, silence, and shadow, unaware but safe. You wouldn't think it, but even in a room so still, so meticulously crafted for silence, sometimes the night stirs, not loudly, just enough to remind you it's alive. A quiet shift in the air, the faintest rustle from a curtain, a distant chirrup from a nightbird outside the outer wall, bold enough to sing before the sky even considers lightning. And then, a sound from above, a subtle mechanical click. You glance up. Near the ceiling, barely visible in the dim glow of oil lamplight, hangs an object you haven't noticed before. a slender, delicate wind panel made of bamboo slats and woven rice. Paper. It rotates gently, almost imperceptibly, suspended by silk thread. This is the heavenly direction dial, a passive atmospheric device designed to track wind and airflow during the Emperor's sleep. You think you're imagining things, but no, there it goes again. A soft click as the bamboo vane shifts ever so slightly toward the east. In the imperial sleep doctrine, this mattered. Wind direction wasn't just meteorology, it was symbolic influence. East wind meant clarity, south wind, passion, west wind, usually avoided. It was considered a dream draft, too heady, too heavy. Tonight's wind is steady and light, a scholar's wind, they'd say. You smile. Even the atmosphere has been coached, and beneath it all the Emperor doesn't move. Still cradled in layers of jade and dream-scented fabric, his sleep has become ritualized stillness, a form of governance all its own. And that brings you, gently, to the most peculiar ritual of them all, because even now someone is listening. At the far side of the room, tucked just beyond a screen of peacock feathers, sits a person cross-legged on a cushion, eyes half closed, spine perfectly straight. She wears simple robes, not the embroidered luxury of court. Her tools are not brushes or bells. She is the breath monitor. Yes, that's a real title. Her only task is to listen to the Emperor breathe all night without speaking, without writing, just listening. Counting inhales and exhales, noting pauses, shallow shifts, rhythms that change with dreams or discomfort. Her presence is quiet insurance. In the event of night terrors, choking, fevered murmurs, or prophetic gasps, she would be the first to notice. She would know before the Emperor himself. It's said that the most skilled breath monitors could identify emotions by exhale, tension in the ribs, hidden resentment, soft belly breath, peace, interrupted sighs, political frustration, or a poorly digested lotus seed cake. One monitor famously recorded that the Emperor's breathing was round and empty as a lake at dawn. She was rewarded with a silken robe and a poem written in her honor. You can't help but marvel. It's as if the entire court has turned inward, placing its ear to the quietest sounds, wind shifts, breath rhythms, dream shapes, and treating them with the urgency of statecraft. No wonder the Emperor sleeps deeply tonight. He is guarded not just by soldiers, but by stillness engineers. And just as you settle into this thought, the next ritual begins. A small, almost invisible string is pulled, and a screen descends gently over the Emperor's bed, woven from silk and crushed pearl threads, diffusing the light to absolute softness. The curtain is called the dream veil, and it signals that the Emperor is in protected dreaming, a state in which no one is allowed to speak above a whisper, not even in adjacent chambers. The veil shimmers faintly, catching the golden edges of the oil lamps, and from your place in the room you see it, the faint, perfect silhouette of the Emperor beneath the veil. Stillness inside stillness, the ultimate nesting doll of calm. And yet even now, something continues. The night readers begin their rounds, carrying scrolls of old stories, folktales, and calming parables they don't read aloud. Instead, they walk slowly around the outer wall, reading to themselves, just loud enough for the air to absorb their words. It's believed that stories, when whispered nearby, find their way into dreams, not like a voice in your head, but like a warm draft slipping under the door of sleep. One scroll tonight contains the tale of the Monkey King's forgotten twin brother, who turned into a cloud and floated away after falling asleep on a peach. Another tells of a sleepy tortoise who refused to race and lived happily ever after, because no one ever bothered him. You smile again. Who writes these? Who chooses them? Who cares? They work. And as the readers continue their slow, soundless circuit, the dream veil shimmers once more. The Emperor does not stir. He is no longer here. Not in this room, not in this world. He has drifted beyond policy and posture and powdered jade into the soft drifting sea of otherwhere, and you're drifting too. And so we come to the edge of the night. Not its end exactly, but that gentle thinning where darkness begins to exhale, and the first breath of dawn lingers just beyond the lattice windows. The oil lamps have burned low now, their flames no longer dancing, just barely clinging. Even the guard's footsteps have faded to occasional murmurs of movement, and the breath monitor has closed her eyes, not asleep, but attuned in a way only silence can train. The Emperor still sleeps, but in this final stretch, the room prepares to release him, because even rest has a ritualized farewell. It begins with the soft ringing of a water chime, a rare instrument made from delicate bronze bowls, filled to precise levels. Played only at this hour, it signals to the body, not the mind, that a return is near, not a jolt, not an alarm, just a ripple in the dream pool. The servant who strikes it has done so every night for decades, with fingers trained to ring but not wake. He lifts the mallet and lets it fall like a sigh. The bowl sings low and round like a pebble dropped in honey. No one speaks, but a shift begins. The dream veil is slowly lifted, not yanked, not drawn, lifted, like mist from water. Beneath it, the Emperor remains still, but his breath is different now, fuller. Not yet conscious, but no longer adrift. As if his spirit has heard the chime and begun padding softly back toward the waking world. You step back to watch the final act of this strange, elegant performance. The consorts, having maintained their postures all night, now rise in perfect coordination. They do not speak or look at each other. They simply adjust their robes and move toward a ceremonial basin of rosewater. Each dips a finger and presses a droplet to her temple, a symbolic return to self. This is not just about waking up. It is about re-entering the world gracefully. One of the oldest court texts calls this process the gentle rise. It insists that the Emperor should rejoin life as a leaf rejoins the stream, not as a stone splits the surface. You look again at the Emperor. His fingers twitch slightly, not from restlessness but from reconnection. The nervous system coming back online. Dream images crumbling like sugar sculptures in sunlight. You imagine what he's seen, a jade staircase leading nowhere, a laughing child he's never met, the quiet dream version of his own voice whispering, truths he'll forget by lunch. Whatever it was, it's ending. A final servant enters with a small scroll, today's weather, but sets it aside knowing it's not time. The scribe waits, but does not unroll his ink cloth. No one dares interrupt the return. Instead, one last act remains, a ritual called the grounding. A warmed jade pebble, smooth and oval, is placed gently in the Emperor's left palm. Its weight is the final tether, a quiet signal that the night is done and the world is real again. You watch closely, his fingers close around it. A slow breath in and out. He doesn't sit up yet. He doesn't need to. Sleep has run its course, not forced. Not broken, eased away like the tide from a temple step. And you, having walked the whole night by his side, feel it too, a softness settling, not sleep, but its echo, a stillness that asks for nothing but acknowledgement. Around you, the palace begins to hum again, but it's a gentle hum, servants moving. Curtains stirring, tea warming in a copper pot nearby. The room remains calm but no longer sacred, because now it belongs to the day, and the Emperor, eyes still closed, now lies no longer in sleep, but in the space after it. That quiet hallway between dreaming and doing, where clarity sometimes visits and peace lingers a moment longer. Final 300 words. Sleep descent ending, so now, you too are here. Not quite awake, not quite asleep. Somewhere along the quiet path you've walked with emperors and incense, with jade pillows and whispered dreams. You feel your own body soften against the place where you're resting. The weight of your hands, the warmth beneath your cheek, the rhythm of your own breath, echoing the long, slow hush of the palace. There are no gongs, no sharp lines between night and day, only softness now, only the gentle understanding that sleep is not a fall, but a slow float, a yielding, a ritual you, too, can craft in small ways, the scent of something familiar, a sound that knows how to leave you alone, a gesture so gentle it feels like being remembered. Tonight, you've been part of a ceremony hundreds of years old, not just watching, but being in it, breathing with it, resting alongside power, fear, dreams, and quiet. So let that stillness stay with you now. Let the flicker of the lanterns dim in your mind. Let the footsteps fade behind you. Let the jade mask slip gently over your thoughts. You don't need to think anymore. You've already traveled far enough. The story has paused and the night is ready to hold you. Sleep like the Emperor waits for nothing, but welcomes you completely. Close your eyes. Float back. Be still. Just breathe. Just rest.